Our headliner this evening is Robby Slaughter. Robby is a workflow and productivity expert. His focus is helping organizations and individuals to become more efficient, more effective, and more satisfied at work. Robby's a regular contributor in several regional magazines and has been interviewed by national publications such as the Wall Street Journal. He's the author of 5 books. His latest book, The New Science of Time Management, will be coming out this summer. And Robby has been involved in Spark since the very beginning. Help me and join me in welcoming Robby to the stage.
Data is everywhere. Certainly, we live in an information age in which data is overflowing virtually every aspect of our life, whether we're uploading, downloading, consuming, or experiencing. But it's not as if this is really anything new. Our most distant ancestors were obsessed with information as well, trying to find ways to communicate what they were doing day in and day out to each other, as well as to us, their descendants. And of course, this data process is ongoing, and the scale is impossible to imagine. The hundreds of millions of billions of hours of content, not all of which is cat videos, up and available for us to consume, much of which is made by amateurs entirely for fun. But I don't want to talk about ones and zeros or cave paintings or YouTube. I want to talk about a distant time, the good old days of 2011. You see, back then in 2011, I went on to one of the social networks, just to kind of an idle question, just something frustrating me that day. I just wanted to know about people that I was talking to. You know, I had this experience where someone I was trying to look up who I had worked with years before, I couldn't find them, and I asked just randomly online, question of the day, if you cannot reconnect with a business contact because they aren't on LinkedIn or Facebook or otherwise findable through Google sleuthing, what conclusions do you draw? I don't remember who I was thinking about, but I figured out that when I did this, because I asked the words question of the day and I had that little question mark at the end, because of this decision, 36 people responded. And it kicked off a firestorm in my mind. And since then, I've asked over 2,500 questions, got responses from over 2,000 people, a total of 64,000 comments and growing. Okay, now let me say that again, because this is insane. Okay, so let's walk through it. I ask a question of the day pretty much every day. I do it on Facebook. I've done it since August of 2011, and people totally love it. Like this question, for example, from March 18th, 2012. What's one thing you've tried once but will never do again? Mark Preston says simply, bungee jump. Shelly Aaron says, 120 miles per hour on a Honda Interceptor motorcycle. What can I say? I was 19 and immortal. Steve Neely simply says, country music. Rocky Walls says, brain sandwich, disgusting. Andy Corman says, marriage. Once is enough. I'm still married to the same woman. Eve Early says cocaine. People will say anything in their response to question of the day. And when I do this, people notice that they ask kind of a lot of interesting questions like, what are you doing? Why do you do this? Is this helpful in some way? What are you learning? Okay, so once again, this is it. I try to ask a question of the day every single day. And I pretty much do it because, you know, I want to know what you guys think. That's pretty much the reason why. Okay, there is another reason, too, and not a reason that I planned for, but it's just sort of happened. And that is that it creates a community. When I ask a question of the day online, people respond, and they respond to each other. And people who don't know each other from different parts of my life get to discover things about the person they're talking to. It creates a community. It creates a process. It creates engagement. Now, I think there's something going on. There's a science underlying question of the day, and it goes back maybe originally to this guy, Stanley Milgram, who was a sociologist. In 1967, he and his grad students did an experiment. They sent about 1,000 letters to random strangers, and all the letters said basically the same thing. They said, hey, we had the name of this guy. He's a dentist in New York City, and we want you to forward this letter to someone who you think might know him. Maybe they have a similar last name. Maybe they're also a dentist. Maybe live in the New York area. Just forward a letter to them. And a lot of people threw the letters out, but some of them got passed along and passed along and passed along. And finally, at the end of the experiment, and many more experiments like it, they discovered that the average 2 people in the world whether they're politicians or sports figures, average Joes or tribesmen in the Kalahari Bush, are connected by about 6 degrees of separation. That there is this complex interconnecting web that none of us can really see out there that has existed long before the technology to make it possible. And also this other bit of research came from the 90s, first found on internet message boards and chat rooms, but also shown to be true in classrooms and other areas, that 90% of people tend to sit in the back, maybe watch, take notes, but they lurk and never say anything. And 1% of people are hogging the conversation. They're the teacher's pet. They're always raising their hand. They're always saying something. And then there's the 9% in the middle, the intermittent contributors who speak up once in a while, something valuable to say, but aren't trying to take control. And the people in that 9% are the ones that get noticed and respected because they're only speaking when they have to speak, but they're not so invisible as to be forgotten. And then one more principle for my friend Jack, the World War II buff. General George S. Patton famously said that you don't win a war by dying for your country. You win a war by making the other son of a bitch die for his country. And this is really how question of the day works, not with war and killing. The way it works is that I just ask a question, and then all of the work is done by all of the people answering and discussing and making things happen. And of course, it's kind of about, personal brand. I want people to know things about me that I can commit to stuff, and I like learning about other people, and I have lots of interest, and I want to talk about pretty much anything. So when you add it all up, the 6 degrees of separation, the 99-1 rule, General Patton, the Facebook every day, curiosity, and my personal brand, what you get is question of the day. Questions like this one from Valentine's Day. If you're on a first date, what is the biggest deal breaker that the date might say? Andy Ball says, I'm still itching. I guess the shots didn't work. And Truba says, are you going to eat all that? Jeff Ghost points out, if a sentence begins with, my parole officer, and on the same theme, Jenna Kino, I'm living in my mother's basement until all the charges are dropped. All deal breakers for the first date on Valentine's Day. But not every question of the day is silly and fun. Some of them are pretty powerful. Back in April of 2017, I asked, we often put only happy moments on Facebook. Where's something that's going poorly in your life right now? Now, I don't know why I did this, because Facebook is basically public. My profile was public. Anyone can go online and scroll back and see the tens of thousands of comments from my people. But I blocked out the names and faces anyway because these answers, like this one that says, my son is sick, seizures and his autism are wreaking havoc on his brain and body. This one says, custody case to bring my daughter home. Someone wrote, I'm fat and I hate it. Something about asking questions and creating a community of discussion inspires people to want to be real, even if real is fun, even if real is sad, as long as real is them having a chance to be there, even if it's in public. Now, I've learned a lot from doing Question of the Day. I even asked about what you learned from Question of the Day or learning about yourself. Dave Underwood says he's learned recently that his hearing is fine, but his listening needs improvement. Greg Attaway said he learned that he's his own long-lost cousin. Congratulations, Greg. But I've learned several things. Number one, if you're going to do a program like this, consistency is incredibly important. For the 5th anniversary of Question of the Day, I asked what people liked about it, and Neil Brown, the restaurateur, says, I like it. Literally the only thing I actually seek out on Facebook. I've also learned how much formatting matters. You have to start with the words question of the day, colon, or at least I do, and you have to have a question mark in the end, otherwise it falls flat. In fact, formatting is so important that back on August 7th, 2013, I typed question of the day, colon, I got distracted, I pressed enter and left blank and got an incredible 26 responses. Like Carl Magnus' response, that one's easy to answer, almost no thought needed at all. Or Elsie Batts, that's a great question, and my answer is. Or the response from Andy Corman, definite maybe. And my favorite, Kelly Wheats, I'm always on the fence on this one. Variation helps a lot. Here's a random spattering of questions from the tool that I got to download all of my responses from just a couple of days in December of a couple of years ago. One about business cards, one about vacation, one about Facebook friends, one about physical exhaustion, one about a hidden place in your city, and one about the perfect beverage. Mixing up the topics day to day keeps people engaged and having an ongoing discussion. And of course, it's not about me. I only answer my only question of the day about 7% of the time, and that's probably too much. It's not about me, it's about all the people answering. Getting help is essential too, because if you're going to ask questions, people want to submit questions to ask, and a large number of them come from other people. Sometimes they're quoted, and sometimes they're anonymous. This is also important. If you're going to ask questions, let people be proud. The most popular questions are when people are bragging about what their hometown's known for, about what they're listening to right now, about their unpopular opinion they want to share. And of course, don't be afraid to be divisive, but only do so sparingly. So if you want to know what's in the data on your Facebook feed, what's in the data on social media, what's in the data on YouTube, what's in the data in the cave paintings, what's in the data everywhere you go, I can tell you, after having 65,000 comments on Facebook, tons of people to talk to, here's what's in the data. It's us.
Don't delay. Get your ticket for the next Sparks event today.